So
We all sound a little bit like Pentecost when we're saying that, don't we?
yeah.
Yes.
So in looking at canonizations of saints and how does somebody earn the title of saint or come to be determined to be a saint?
Go to the Pope.
4 different processes. If you look, there's the pre-schism. So before the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox split, when we were all one church, it was somewhat different, although it developed over time, of course, through the centuries. The Roman Catholics currently have their own system that has evolved and actually changed significantly after 1917. Eastern Orthodox have their own, and then the Anglican / Episcopalian line kind of has their own viewpoint on it. So, and one thing about our tradition, the Episcopal Anglican Communion, that I really appreciate is that we are more open to honoring everybody, all Christian saints. Whereas, once the split happened, the Roman Catholics had their own saints and the Orthodox had their own, and they don't
share.
Yeah, they don't honor each other's lines, and I like the fact that we look at all of them and say, hey, these were people who had significant contributions to Christianity that sacrificed themselves in one way or another, miracles and so forth involved with their lives, tremendous stories that make them worthy of honor and recognition. So that's why I thought, well, we should look at how all of them happen, because we in our tradition do acknowledge, regardless of which line they're in, how do these people become determined to be saints? In the early process, early in the church, they were basically by the popular acclaim of believers. And what happens is it was very local. Individual churches, of course, then at that point, Christianity was mostly in the Middle East, Eastern Africa, southern parts of Europe, Roman Empire area. And they would remember particular apostles or martyrs. They would add honoring them into their local liturgies, maybe on the anniversary of their death or the anniversary of their birth, would be the most 2 common times. And eventually, with local veneration of them, it would start to spread around to other nearby churches and eventually filter up to the bishops. And the bishop of that region would recommend formal recognition, or the bishop that they formally recognize them. And they would go through a council where everybody would discuss this saint and eventually say, we think the global entire Christian community should, and they would present it to other bishops of other regions, and they would be universally accepted. It was fairly informal and really a grassroots kind of thing. And then there are categories of the early saints that are listed: Christ and the prophets, apostles and evangelists, martyrs and confessors, church fathers and hierarchs, ascetics and monastics, and then just and holy in other walks of life. So we can look at different categories of saints that fall into these categories, especially in the early church. Then what happened along in the 6th century, things started to evolve. And so the 6th century onto the 12th, the intervention of the local bishop was required, which actually was already ongoing. But what happened was the local bishop would begin with a request from a local community. And upon studying the request, the difference is now there would be a written biography, and the bishop would review that, and if found favorable, he would issue a decree to legitimize the liturgical cult and local canonization. And then around the 10th century, it became more complicated. The bishop also would collect eyewitnesses of testimonies for the people that knew the person, if they were still within the same generation. And then he would provide a summary of the case to the Pope to get the Pope's approval. And the Pope would review the case and, if approved, issue a decree declaring the person a canonized saint. So between the 6th and 12th century, it became more and more common to have to get the Pope's approval.
Well, where was the Cardinals in this?
You know, I don't think they were involved in that process yet.
So you could take it straight as a bishop to the Pope, not go through a cardinal.
Yeah. I'm not sure when the cardinal system was developed. That was pre-schism or not.
Oh, I kind of thought it had been around for a long time, but obviously not.
Well, I'm sure it has, but I don't know if at that point, if we had cardinals. I'm not sure. I did look that up. Anyway, the first case of an actual papal intervention for canonization is in 993. So their first thousand years of making saints was less formal and became a more formalized process. Of course, that's around when the East and West split, and then they started developing their own systems. And so then after the split, we move on to 1917, and the Roman Catholics develop an entirely new complex code that they've had for the last century. And they look at someone who's being presented, the same sort of process where they're presented locally and move up to the bishop. And then they go through these steps where they're given a title called Servant of God.
I have some information on cardinals.
Oh, go ahead.
By the 8th century, the Roman cardinals constituted a privileged class among Roman clergy. They took part in the administration church of Rome and in the papal liturgy. By decree of Synod of 769, only a cardinal was eligible to become Bishop of Rome.
By what year?
769.
Oh, 769. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They gave themselves power.
Yes.
Only a senator can become Senate. That sounds democratic.
Right. So the Roman Catholic process today, after they're declared servant of God, then they're declared venerable. It's a title for a saint who has not yet reached beatification stage, but whose heroic virtue has been declared by the Pope.
That's where David and I am right now.
Is that where you guys are at right now?
That's where we are. We're waiting patiently, aren't we, David? Done.
Well, next you'll be beatified. It's the second stage of proclaiming a sainthood.
Does Jan have to give a statement, Bud?
I hope not. I'm doomed.
He knows the truth.
Yeah.
So in the beatification stage, they have to attribute a miracle. So that's something that's unique to the Roman line, is requiring a miracle to be involved.
I thought they'd have two miracles, but I don't know.
So, now, like the Orthodox don't require a miracle, but there very often are miracles associated. That's what brings people's attention to people sometimes to, hey, this person may be a saint.
Well, I mean, the miracle consists of I prayed to whoever it is and was cured. That's a miracle.
Right, yes. Of course, they try to verify that's really true or get more than one example. Or
it depends whether the Cardinals like them or not.
So anyway, that's the process in the Roman Church. It's much more complex, and that's been since 1917. But meanwhile, in the East, it's less complex and less formalized. It's still kind of the grassroots kind of thing where local churches, and actually in the Eastern Church, there are still sometimes there are local areas where local churches or parishes or dioceses in the Orthodox Church where they may have their own little saint that they honor, that are not more global. And so, or they're global, but they have more emphasis on, particularly regional favorite saint. But it's still the same process where the request goes up to the bishop. They form a committee or a synod, and they discuss that in the synod level, and the committee decides that they should move forward as a saint. And if the synod agrees, then next step is writing a liturgical service and writing an icon for them, because the Orthodox are big on icons. So if they're going to become a saint, they have to have an icon.
Oh,
And then there'll be a formal service where they present the icon, and it's called the rite of glorification, and then they become canonized in the Eastern Church as a saint. And they have vespers and matin services, and they do chants and all the Orthodox type stuff, and the saint's icon is unveiled, and at that moment they're formally recognized in the Eastern Church as a saint. So you can't be a saint without getting an icon written. And then they share them with other Orthodox lines. So if it was a Greek Orthodox, then they're going to share it with all the other Orthodox lines, so they can put it on their calendars. Now, the Anglican Communion is a little different. We have, since our breaking off of the Roman Church, there was, when the Anglican Communion broke off, there was a drive to be trying not to look Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
That drive, there was a period of time, of course, where they got rid of vestments and anything that looked Catholic for a while, and some of that stuff came back into the church later. But one of the things they got rid of is using the term saints. And if you look at our calendar, some of the people we honor, and we call them church heroes instead of saints, they're basically the same thing as a saint in a Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox tradition. But we don't want to, for some reason, we don't want to use the term, and I personally wish we would. But so there are people that we honor as Christian heroes in our calendar, but they're not always necessarily Anglican. And that's one of the things I like about our system better, is like, we're not, the Eastern Orthodox are only going to make an Orthodox person a saint, and the Roman Catholics are only going to make a Roman Catholic person a saint. But we honor people from everywhere. We have, our Christian heroes, we have Martin Luther King Jr., who was neither Roman Catholic, Orthodox, or Anglican, but he was a Christian, and he did amazing work. And so we honor people that aren't necessarily, of course, we have people that are uniquely Anglican. C.S. Lewis we honor, and we should, and I'm glad we do. And if we use the word saint in our tradition, C.S. Lewis would probably be Saint C.S. Lewis, right? So
Florence Nightingale.
Florence Nightingale, you're right. That's right. That's
Right.
a good one.
Very
We
good.
honor her. We don't call her Saint Florence because we
No.
don't do that.
Yeah.
And I personally wish we would, but we don't. So we have our own saints, finger quotes around the word, that we recognize. We just don't do that terminology. And I like the fact that, hey, we'll honor saints or Orthodox saints, and or even people from other denominations. So
Well, aren't saints really just really exceptional Christians, or recognized as such?
yes,
And I guess the difference is that we recognize exceptional people, Christians, of course, but just don't call them saints. But
yes, good.
sort of like a CNN hero.
I have to tell you, I do not like the term hero. That depicts comic books to me.
yes.
I mean, it really
It's-
does.
It's a little overused, I think.
Yeah,
I think it's way overused, but it
Yeah.
just not for the church. They are saints. That's my
right.
way.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
You got the hero of the Soviet Union too. That's one of their titles.
Well, that's true.
Is that right?
Yep.
Very high honor to be awarded that. Former Soviet Union. I guess it's not used anymore.
I think it also has a connotation of male. that it's a male person, a hero. And I think,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I guess because of my generation, heroes, you didn't have many female heroes.
Interesting.
Heroines, but less.
Heroines.
Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've seen enough superhero movies that I know that the women can have superpowers too.
Are you kidding? Of course we do.
But
What's
see,
that?
that to me is what it reminds me of. The superhero movies,
Right.
the comic books, all
Right.
that. I have a hard time taking it seriously when applied to the church. It's
Yeah.
bothersome.
So is that a formal term now in our church? Is
No,
hero?
I don't think it's a formal. I don't know if it's a formal term, but
Good.
that's what the term they use.
Okay.
We're not using it anymore.
I'm not voting on that.
No. Good for you, Jen.
Yeah, the VA was passing out signs to put in the back of your car saying VA healthcare hero, and I was like, I didn't want one. I was like, I didn't do anything heroic. I just I'm doing my job,
Right.
And so I'm not crazy about that term either.
Yeah.
So in 1958, the Lambeth Conference made some formal statements and some resolutions about this topic, commemoration of saints and heroes of the Christian Church and the Anglican Communion. There's 3 resolutions they made. One is the conference holds that the purpose of the calendar is to increase our thankfulness to God and to strengthen our faith by recalling regularly the great truths of the gospel, the principal events in life of our Lord, and the lives and examples of men and women who have borne preeminent witness to the power of the Holy Spirit and are with us in the communion of saints. The Resolution 78. It considers power to revise or amend calendars. I don't know why they spelled it with a K, but I copied and pasted it from the resolution. Should be exercised with the same authority as required for revision of the Book of Common Prayer within each several church or province. Allow supplementary commemorations for local use in the calendar. And then 79, they are the opinion that the following guide should be used for selection of saints and heroes. See there, they use both words, saints and heroes.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of scriptural saints, care should be taken to commemorate men or women in terms with a strict accord with the facts made known in Holy Scripture. In case of other names, calendars should be limited to those whose historical character and devotion are beyond doubt. And C, in the choice of new names, a connotation should be observed and controversial names should be not inserted until it can be seen in the perspective of history.
Controversial.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the addition of new names should be normally a result of widespread desire and expressed in the region concerned over a reasonable period of time. So it's interesting if you look at their formal statement from this Lambeth Conference in the 50s, it's kind of the same flow that the early church did. It's kind of universal grassroots recognition, but we got to give it some time and make sure this sticks, that everybody continues to agree. And it's much less formal of a process than the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and less formal than the Eastern Orthodox. It's also less concrete. So, the double-edged sword, it's pros and cons to this process. It's like, it's less formal, which I think is good. It's more rooted in the early pre-schism church. It's also less concrete. It's like we don't end up really calling anybody anything, except for saying, hey, this guy was a great, or this lady, this person was a great contributor to our faith. Let's honor them in our calendar, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Look back and recognize former people who have lived and contributed significantly. So not sure we actually really canonize anybody. We put people on our calendar. Mm-hmm. Regardless, so I wanted to do a course on Anglican saints. And so I looked at, here's another resolution I forgot about. Whoops. The conference recommends the church should continue to commemorate saints in 3 ways: red letter days, black letter days, or a memorial collect.
Yeah.
And so I had to look up red letter days and black letter days because I didn't know what that meant. And maybe y'all do, but major feasts of the years are red letter days, and the minor feasts are black letter days. And it comes to early practice of printing the prayer book with calendars in red. The major feasts were printed in red, and minor feasts are in black. So that's where that comes from. The term is applied to feasts for which the Book of Common Prayer provides full propers, including a collect, Old Testament, Psalm, New Testament, and Gospel. Then I had to look up propers because I didn't know what that meant.
I'm not sure about that.
Propers are variable parts of the Eucharistic liturgy. This is a copy and paste from the Episcopal Church glossary on the website. Variable parts of the Eucharistic liturgy in the daily office, which are appointed for a particular day and season occasion. In other words, they're not parts that are fixed and do not change. There are optional parts of the liturgy where you may choose one thing or another, or it changes over time depending on the season, and prayers and collects and so forth. Anyway, so that's what red letter days and black letter days are. There's about 67 lesser feasts in the black letter days.
I don't think red letter days are movable.
Right.
Black letter days, I'm not sure, but some other of them are movable.
Yes, that's correct, Peter. Yeah, the red letter days are fixed, and the things we do on them are fixed. And the black letter days are more flexible and modifiable. Anyway, so I was looking at, now here's something I want to get your feedback and opinion on. So I was looking at saints, again, finger quotes around saints, Anglican, Episcopalian Christians who we honor and commemorate. And we go to the pre-schism era, and they have the title of saint. And then after, of course, we commemorate them on our calendar as saints or heroes. I would still consider them Anglican saints and want to talk about some of them. I've got a list of interesting people. I was trying to focus on people maybe were less familiar, so that it would be interesting to learn about new people. I didn't include these people, although they would justifiably be in a talk about Anglican saints. Cranmer, obviously, St. David, Bridget, St. Patrick, Columba, Thomas Becket, C.S. Lewis, would all be valid people to talk about in this topic, in this course.
We've all heard of St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I've talked about all these people in the past in other talks, so I didn't include them. But I want to get your feedback. If you want to talk about these people or not, I might include them. To give you some perspective, here's the saints that I wrote this course about.
I saw that first one, I thought it said Kramer, and I thought, oh, I didn't know Seinfeld characters were saints. It's Cranmer, so sorry.
Yeah.
That's Kramer's real name.
We have Amanda coming in late. Let's see who Amanda is. So, any opinions on that? So here's who St. Alban was the first Anglican saint. Then we have St. Norwich, Augustine of Canterbury, King Charles, Thomas Ken, and the Wesley brothers. What is the general consensus? Do you guys want me to include these other people, or have you heard enough and know enough about them that you wouldn't be interested in it?
I think it would be neat to hear about them.
Okay, I'll include them.
Doesn't have to be, lengthy.
Yeah,
No,
right.
not
Right.
remind us about them. Like I know Columba, but I can't think what Columba got up to.
That's kind of what I was thinking this morning. I was leaning towards doing this, just like you said, just at least a brief mention and a summary, and because you might not remember everything about it. I mean, everybody knows about Becket. I guess it's I was looking at Becket, like, yeah, I'll know the story about Becket. I don't think I could tell you anything you don't know about Becket.
No.
But, it could be interesting.
Yeah, I think a thumbnail sketch of every one of
Okay,
them.
I'll do
Don't assume we know anything, please.
I'm constantly rewriting these courses as we go anyway, so it'll be easy for me to throw that stuff in there. And we have somebody named Amanda joining us, but I don't see a video or hear her.
She's muted, but
Yeah.
Welcome.
if you can hear us.
Amanda, if you're with us, unmute yourself and oh, she went away.
Maybe it's Saint
Have
Amanda.
you scared her?
Maybe it was someone trying to log in for church.
Oh,
and
maybe
just
so.
went to the wrong Zoom.
Covered the
place.
wrong link. Sure, that's possible. Okay, well, I'm going to modify and include those other people too then.
Sorry to give you extra work.
No, it's not. There's no worries, no problem. Right? And then we're going to start talking about St. Albans. I think we'll start next week with that because we're close to the end anyway. So that's the introductory talk on how people could become saints. I think it's a kind of an interesting process.
Yeah. I love the way the Anglican Church has it. Everybody kind of reaches an agreement, which is not really anything, but everybody continue to do their own thing.
Well, you know, you can
That's
save
true.
some time because we have, actually have two Davids here. So which one of you is the saint?
Oh, it's him.
Oh, goodness.
Well, yeah, it is time to get ready for the service. David,
Yeah.
it's going to be fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Sir.
It would even be fun to have some of the old, I guess, the traditional saints or the Catholics, since we're
You know,
inclusive.
I've thought about that too. I have a list of Catholic saints and a list of Orthodox saints. I've thought about just doing like after the Anglican saints. Well, who are the non-Anglican ones that are interesting and have contributed to Christianity, global?
Yeah. And
Is
there
there a
was
lot of
that,
There are countless great stories out there. You know.
and then there was Fox's Book of Martyrs, which was used to have Sunday afternoon reading for children during the more puritanical stages of our country. And they had horrible black and white illustrations of the dreadful deaths of all these poor people. And they'd hand this to kids on Sunday afternoons when you weren't allowed to play or do anything.
Great. And then a bit.
Or
Speaking of
you
the
could-
Brothers Grimm, right? I mean,
Yeah. Don't you want to be a saint, sweetie?
pass on that. Thanks.
And you could do one Sunday on all the saints that the Catholics axed back in the 60s. I mean, St. Christopher medals were in every Catholic automobile in the world
Right.
for safe travel. Well, they got rid of him.
Did they? I didn't know that. Did they really?
Oh,
yeah.
That illustrates how popularity waxes and wanes
Right.
according to the current social context.
Yep.
Yes, for sure.
Why did they axe Saint Christopher?
Self-driving cars, I think.
I think they felt there wasn't enough proof he really existed. He was the one who was supposed to have carried the baby Jesus over the river. And
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I don't remember any more details than that.
Yeah, there's many depictions of him with a child on his shoulders.
All
waving
right,
through
everybody,
the
see you
waters.
next week. Gonna get ready.
Okay.
Bye, Peter.
Bye, Peter.
Bye-bye, Peter.
Bye.
Well, I can, I think I'll call my good friend that growing up who's Catholic and ask her if she knows.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know.
Mhm.
I didn't know he got desanctified.
You
Yeah, I
can
was
be.
going to ask about that. Can you get un or D?
Evidently, you can.